Go. So back to our application, we're actually gonna get rid of the two buttons on the home screen. I know I added those for demonstration purposes. We don't need them right now though, so we're gonna go ahead and clean them out. Right now we have our car rental app that if we run it, start. Pretty basic app. Where are you booting this? Here. Away. There we go. Cool. Expressing car rental with our slightly off-colored Expedian green, right? Expedian? No.
Enterprise.
Enterprise. There it is. Thank you. Enterprise green. There we go. Our slightly off enterprise green because ours is a little bluish. So
he's teaching us to hack right now, so
you were thinking Expedia.
Yep. Exactly right, Jeff. We're getting the hacking. We got it.
we're gonna have people go to our Expedian instead of Enterprise to rent cars.
Exactly. We want to have them rent from us. Not we don't want to steal all the traffic.
Looks all the same.
Exactly. Just slightly off color so we can't be charged with copying them. You know, we're slightly blue. It's different. We're pulling a, what is it? Who was the artist that had to do that? Where it's like, it's slightly different. I didn't copy people. A couple artists have done that, I'm sure.
That's how you get around copyright.
That's
Exactly.
Warhol.
Warhol?
I mean, that's pretty much art in general.
Yeah. I remember.
Are you talking about Vanilla Ice taking that queen?
That's who it is. Yes, I remember that. I saw that clip. That was it. That's the clip in my head. I'm like, who is that again? Why do I have a clip of them doing that? Whereas Vanilla Ice. Yeah. Yeah. You had like the one slight difference. Like, see, it's different. Sure. Cool. So we got that. That's us. We just add a little blue to our color. We're totally different now. Got that. So what we want to do actually is we do want to take this green though and push it into a nav bar. So the main screen, of course, is going to be mostly white. This color is mostly the accent color. It's going to be on all the buttons. It's going to be the nav bar. This isn't really going to be a background color. That's kind of annoying. We're also going to bring in a splash image for the top. And so let's go ahead and prep for that by finding a splash image. So again, one of my favorite sites to use for this kind of stuff is Unsplash. And do car. Which one do we want to grab for car rental? What do you think?
What did you call? What is it? Unsplash.
Unsplash. So Unsplash is a site where you get a bunch of splash images. So they're meant to be. So splash images. One of the main things about them is that they have to be high res. That way you can handle multiple varying screen sizes without pixelation attempts. If you use a small resolution picture for your splash image, then somebody with a nice gaming monitor, for example, like Sergio, I'm sure, will show these splash images as all pixelated and gross or have repetition going on, whereas the everyday person viewing on their phone is going to see the image fine. We want to make sure we can handle all screen sizes, whether they're using the 4K wide monitors or using their tablet or their phone. You want to make sure that the image can be handled on multiple resolutions. So Unsplash has high resolution images that are in the public domain that you are free to use without any sort of payment on any site. So commercial or non-commercial. So they do ask that if you use it, you credit them somewhere on the site, but again, it's not required. Images are put on Unsplash with the understanding that they can be used freely without royalties or monetization. So you can use them freely without clicking back to someone. Which is one of the main reasons why I go to this site is because it's good to have free to use images for a site when you first start. Be aware that, of course, public opinion that if your company starts getting very profitable, it's considered poor public opinion that you're using free images for your sites. But in the beginning, no one blames you. But yeah, if you use an image that is not meant to be free, your public image is not going to be good. And not only that, you can then get sued. It's not common though, so don't be like panicky about it. Very rarely are people actually sued for images because it's just not worth it. The amount of money it takes to go after someone can be difficult if the person doesn't have money that they'll actually get paid back. So, but again,
Yeah.
not legal advice. Don't take that at word. Do everything at your own risk. You do not take an image. If you do take a non-free image and you do get sued, I did say that could happen. I just said it was unlikely. So
On the recording.
You've been warned.
you've been warned. But yes,
Well, you won't say you don't know us?
I have no idea who these people are, Your Honor.
The views and
told them
opinions of
nothing was
Cliff do
said.
not reflect career devs as a whole.
Yes, exactly.
At the beginning of every video now. Yep, there you go.
There's only 20 plus videos showing all of our faces in videos with them, but
I don't know who these people are. They're just talking heads.
Just a temp.
They're just talking heads. I feel like I'm talking to myself. It's all good. Anyway, so we have this site. So yeah, the main benefit of this site, of course, like I said, is the fact that these images are high resolution. Majority of them are landscape photos, which are also the key item for splash pages, since a majority of websites are viewed in a landscape mode. Phones do make it a little less likely, but most on splash images still, even on phone, will still present in the landscape mode. So we want landscape images that are high res, that way they are not pixelated and that they can fit really well. And again, just have that nice spark. The next thing we also want to be very careful of with splash images is the color contrast. You don't want high conflicting colors of lights and darks. So this image here would be horrible for a splash image because we're planning to put text on top. Now, don't get me wrong, there are ways around this by using something called a shadow box where you can put a border or black outline around the text. So there's that trick. There's also the trick of actually putting a haze or a background like shader underneath the text as well. So you have a box that is, yeah, a blur. That can help. So there's multiple techniques to get around that if you need that. Those tend to be more useful though if you want to have video for your splash. If your splash wants to be a video or a GIF, a GIF, whatever, and some sort of moving element, because that you can't really control where the lights and darks are going to show up, and they can show up anywhere. Especially if you also want to have it be a randomized or cycling, and especially if you ever wanted to do it where it could be user submitted data, where if it's something coming from an external source that is not procured by you. If your video is procured by you, you can make sure again the video is set up in a way where the text will show up no matter where it is. But so most of these techniques are useful in that case. The one I saw that was best for me was the opposite color or the contrast color border outline to the text. So on my site, I had a text that was white text on the surface. So I give it a black border. What that did is during light colors, the outline, in the darker color, when the video was dark, you didn't see the outline. The white text was nice, bright, it showed up, was in your face. As soon as the lighter video started coming out, or the video went lighter, the outline of the text would start to appear to make sure that the text wasn't lost in the brightness of the video. So the video went bright, the text wasn't lost because of the black border. As soon as the video went dark, the black border would fade into the background. You wouldn't really notice it much. And so the text color of white was, or really off-white, was doing most of the carrying. So there are techniques. So since we are using a static image though, we can pick an image that will work well with the text we want to use. So again, this one, probably not the best because again, we can't really guarantee that our text is going to show up against the white. It could show up against here on the black. And there's also no guarantee that the text will show up in the black. Because again, how the page loads this, it could load differently. So as I show that, let me go ahead and do this, and it's actually not the best way to show it, but never mind. Well, maybe, hold on. What do they do when I shrink this? Yeah, so when I make this smaller, we can just see it keeps shrinking, 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 and they just shrink the image. And so we can't guarantee where the text is going to be. If we put the text in the center, in this screen, it's right here on top of the text, it's right here on top of the car. As soon as we shrink it, if they don't shrink the text along with it or keep the text as a kind of a percentage, then the center could be here, yes, but then some of the top of the words or bottom of the words could be up in the white, depending on how big it is and how many lines of text we have. When we have multiple lines of text on a big image, when I miss and highlights a whole bunch, big image, the text might be here and here on the image, where it's mostly on the black, on the darker coloring. So white text should show up fine, except with a little bit of annoyingness on these shiny parts, but not as bad. As soon as the image gets smaller, then some of that top text might bleed into the top area and be completely whited out by the sky. And so those are the things you got to be aware of and be careful of. So you want to make sure that your image is not high contrast. If you're doing a static image, you're not going to use any of the other techniques to ensure that your text will be visible. So with those items in mind, if you guys are actually looking for the same one, let's find an image that we like for our splash image.
That orange car right there.
This one?
Yeah.
I'm impressed that you decided to go for an old school car for our car rental app, our modern car rental app.
Maybe that's where we differ.
I was
We
liking
s-
that one
we
too. I was
rent
liking the old
cars.
Volkswagen.
I mean, I have a 40-year-old truck, so I mean.
Also, you guys never cease to amaze me.
I actually like the one a little bit up, a little bit further. We gonna do black. That one right there. That one with the down.
This
That
one?
one right. The Baltimore one. Yeah, that one there. Are we gonna do white text or are we doing black
That could
text?
work, and it's actually not.
Yeah.
It's not that bad for a car rental app because you see multiple cars in the
You see
background
multiple
too.
cars, yeah, makes sense.
I was actually unsure we're gonna be able to get multiple cars in it. That's actually better than I expected to actually get that. Because yeah, we could put that here, and then we have multiple cars in that one, and it's simple. I think I like this one. Yeah, I'll use this one. Again, you guys can use whichever. You can definitely use whatever image you want. Go for it. What I like about this is that majority of the image is in color, so we could definitely make sure we put the text in the center. And I might even still, depending on if I have my notes with it, I think my technique for making sure the image will pop up, white text will still pop up over here. I think it might be in my notes, but it is, I'll give you guys the technique for that, the darker border around the text. So go ahead and download this, download free. And this is what I'm telling you, it's like here, say thanks, give a shout out on social or copy the text below to attribute. Again, this is what they recommend. They don't require this though. That's the main reason why I like Unsplash. All the images here are free to use. They ask that you support the author, the artist, but you don't have to. Just be aware that it is, if you can, and you do remember it, go for it. And it can definitely look good on your personal projects if you put up there that somewhere in the site, even at the very, very bottom or on an about page or something, that you add a simple shout out to the artist that you use.
Can you Can you put up your own on this and have them published?
Probably. Yeah, submit a photo. Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Has
And
to be
again, it's a
high
great-
res though.
It does have to be high res, yes.
Yeah,
But most phones
my
nowadays
phone
do
is
that.
pretty high res, so but
Yeah.
I'll see.
Yeah, definitely. For example, this one alone, did we actually download it? We did download it. Show and finder. This one has a resolution of 5,000 by 3,000.
Hmm.
So pretty high res. So pretty good photo there. And that's, again, really what we're trying to get there. So that way we make sure that no matter how big the image is, we don't get the pixelation. So, right up, you can see right there. I can start zooming in. We shouldn't see much pixelation until we get really far in. Now we start to see it. See, now you start to see the noise. But if this is our splash screen on our website, we've done something wrong. So if this is what I'm seeing on the website, I have a problem. So that's one of the benefits of the high res screens, is that by the time you're hitting that large resolution, by the time it's blowing it up too much, you should be fine. Right? So anyway. So we have our splash screen. Let's go ahead and I'm going to add this to our assets. So if anyone remembers where that is, does anyone remember where our assets are stored? Minimize everything. Where do we store the assets? I don't know if we actually did any for this site yet, so. I don't think we actually did any for this one, so that's fine. I don't remember where the assets go.
Source.
Yeah, you just make us. We can just make us an assets folder here. So remember, they just loaded that logo right from the source folder. So the assets can be loaded too. But it's very common to put images and files that you're going to use that are not your website or anything like that as a assets folder. So this is very, very common to do. A lot of the compilers and stuff will actually compress or optimize the files in an assets folder for public loading. So the assets folder is a pretty recognized folder. So with our assets folder, go ahead and just drag and drop the image in there. So grab it, drag over here to assets, drop that in. Doesn't happen anymore. See, we have our image there. So far, so good.
That name is too long.
Oh, yeah, we're definitely gonna change the name because we definitely want to type that. So good call.
I
can,
need
That's
a
exactly what I
star-
just did.
star-
Can't you just rename
Oh,
it
dang it.
in the in the editor?
Yes, we're just gonna rename it there. Yeah. Just prepping up. I lost my notes for a second there. I accidentally clicked the next button. So want to reopen my notes. 1 second. Check that out here. Yeah. I'm just gonna click on that, rename it to Splash. Again, you want to name it something that is useful to know what it is. You don't need to know what's in the image necessarily. A lot of times what you're naming the image is actually based on where it's being used and what it's being used for, a lot of times. That way, if you ever want to change the image here, instead of having to change the code somewhere else, you can just bring a new image in and rename it to Splash, and your website will load the new image. This is one of the benefits of that, is now you can just easily swap images out by changing the names of files versus changing the code. That makes sense?
Does it matter what file type you're using?
Not really. There are, of course, benefits to other ones. I tend to only use, for me, like I only use PNG when I need a transparent layer. If I don't need a transparent layer, I use JPEG because JPEG tends to be smaller in file size than PNG overall. And it's splitting hairs a lot of times nowadays in the more modern systems, but just be aware that, yeah, I tend to see as a pattern, JPEGs seem to be smaller than PNGs, but yeah, JPEGs do not have a transparent layer. So PNGs are used for transparent layer, and then there are some more modern systems or modern templates like I can't remember what they're called, but there's a
one
bunch of
called JFIF. It's the
Don't know
one
that
that
one.
mine downloaded in.
don't know that one.
I
There's a
assume
bunch of
that's a
new
JPEG.
file formats. Yeah, there's a bunch of new file formats now. There's one that's like a Google one that's used a lot now. So yeah, there's a bunch of them. W3 or something like that. I don't know what it's called, but there's a bunch of different image formats, and the whole purpose of them again is just to optimize them for web usage, so they minimize bandwidth. A lot of the newer formats are meant to transfer across the internet better. So JPEGs, PNG, a lot of those file formats were meant to display well and stay on a computer and transfer through like flash drives and stuff. Nowadays, a lot of the newer file formats are meant to transfer across the web better. So they benefit bandwidth and convenience on that, so that they'll load, so that the website or the web page will load faster. I think even some of these new templates, what they do is they'll actually they'll partial load, like they'll load a lower quality version of it first, and then load the rest of the details at a later sense. So they're really cool. I don't dig too much into it because it's not like I need to know how they work. Just know that they do and what they're better at. Cool. So we have that. So now that we have our image, back to our home screen. And so what we're gonna have on our home screen. Actually, let's do the nav bar first. Home screen first. Maybe the nav bar first. I'm thinking. What do you guys think? Nav bar first, or finish the home screen first?
Navbar, it's part of the home screen.
Yeah, can be argued. Yep. So
But
let's
then
build
you know how
navbar then.
big it is because that image is going to go under the navbar, correct?
Yeah. So let's go ahead and build it then. So a new component, Folder. Bar. Again, just be aware with navbar again, I'm not giving you guys a mobile friendly navbar. Those things do exist like hamburger menus and stuff like that. Everything's helping out with the text shadow. Nice. Yep. Now, text shadow is how I add a border to the entire text. Is that the right format to get it to wrap it with a 1 pixel border, or is that just give it a shadow?
That's just for the text itself,
Yeah.
not for the
Yep.
box.
No, I don't want the box. I want the shadow. Yeah, just make sure that there's the text shadow just adds it as a shadow like to the lower right. But yeah, if you type it right, you'll actually get a border around the text, like a solid border.
Yeah, that 1px is like the direction of the shadow. You can
Yep.
change the direction and how far it is.
Yeah, looks right. We can test it. Anyway, let's make our nav bar. Did I actually give you guys a nav bar? No, I didn't. Oh, we did. Did we not save that as a common component? I don't think we did. It's fine though. We can build another one. We can build another one. It'd be good for you guys to get it. Oh no, we did actually bring one over. I brought my nav bar over from my previous application. Right. We just didn't put it in the common for some reason. Look at it. So maybe we should add it to our common. What do you guys think? Add our nav bar to our common package, or what do you think?
How hard is it
I
to
think
build out?
so.
What was that, Matt?
How hard is it to build out? Because it might be worth the practice to build it out
Yeah, I
ourselves.
wouldn't mind
and then
building
just-
it over real quick.
I
grab
wouldn't
it.
mind
Let's do
building it out.
All right.
Yeah, I agree.
New file. Navbar.js.
Hey Cliff, just a question. Is that common for us to have to build it, or we normally use like Material UI or the bootstraps, that things?
Again, so I've kind of gotten used to Flexbox and not using Materialize and Bootstrap anymore because those they look like every other website. And my goal is to make sure that the internet does not become homogenized. Websites should be unique as far as I'm concerned. And while, yes, some companies may use something like Materialize or something or Bootstrap, they won't tend to use those. They'll use something of their own style guide that is Bootstrap-like or something like that. Like I'm
They use it
working
as a
with,
framework.
yeah, they'll have their own personal framework or a collection of CSS. I will say that I've been working with a client right now that is they have monetary backing behind themselves. They very easily could have gotten away with using some sort of like framework or something for their front end, and they did not. They made an original design. Now, yes, they have most of their code in there that I'm basing my styling on that original styling. So we're adding original code and original styling whenever we're adding new pieces to it. So it depends on the company. Knowing how things like Materialize and Bootstrap work is good, but also being able to create your own doesn't hurt. So trying to teach you guys either Materialize or Bootstrap is going to take time. That is not necessary because it's not too difficult to understand how to use one of those. It's just class names. It's really all it is, just classes. So I'd rather introduce some of the CSS elements for you guys so that you get a little more used to that. Again, if you want to use Materialize or Bootstrap in your project, go for it. All right, so.
And is it possible to make the nav bar into part of common?
Sorry, what?
Can we just move, is there a way of making nav bar into common?
You definitely could. This is something that, yeah, you could either bring it in. I could even bring the nav bar into common, like the folder, once we're done with
Oh,
it.
just bring
If
the
we feel like-
folder in and
Yeah,
then
we
just
could do that.
access it that way. Okay.
Yep, we can definitely do that.
That's fine. Yep, that's good.
Let's build it. So again, let's start with, again, our template. Challenge you guys. I'm gonna hold for like 5 seconds. Build out the basic template that we do for every single new component we ever built. So see if you guys remember what the basics are for these things. Start with that. I'm gonna count to like 5 and then I'll start typing and hopefully you guys can beat me. Challenge yourself. Can you remember what it is?
I think I already have.
Nice. And then once I type mine, you can then compare it, contrast against it. Minute. Basics. Basic component. That's the basics, right? The minimum we
The
need.
only thing that I missed was the nav bar part.
Which one? There's 3 nav bar.
Oh, sorry, on line 5.
Just the text. Okay, yeah. What do you have here then?
Nothing.
Oh,
I wasn't sure what to put in there.
you just put a return, a blank, an empty return.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, okay, no, that's fine. I don't know what that would do. I guess it would just return.
It was
nothing.
just erroring out. No,
Oh.
there was lines in there that says expression expected.
Yeah, it wants you to return something because you put the parentheses. Yep.
Correct.
Someone trying to speak? 'Cause I'm hearing like a garbled. I don't know if someone's trying to say something. If you're trying to speak and I'm not responding to you, throw like a reaction or something. Because someone I feel like is getting garbled. Could just be audio feedback though from the system. Okay, good. No one's responding. So good on that. Let me keep the chat open because Erin keeps talking through chat and I don't know if I'm missing it, how long it takes me to notice. So can keep that open. Cool. Chat that there. All right, so yeah, that's our basics. So the first thing we need, so how a nav bar works is annotation, drawing. I'm going to use tablet. Come back out.
I think for Christmas, Cliff needs one of the Huon tablets. You can use it as his screen, but you can physically write on it. You can use that as your screen.
But yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, that would be nice.
That'll be his
This
next
is-
keyboard challenge.
this is
just
my
using the
Huion.
on-screen keyboard to code.
I mean, if that's one of them, you can buy the base that sits up. That's actually the tablet I view you guys on. So you can use
This
that
is my
as a
Huon. It
tablet
just
to
doesn't
write
have
on.
a screen. Yeah,
Oh.
it's just the touch. It's just a touch tablet. It has no screen on it. Yeah.
I was trying to learn ZBrush to do 3D in a 3D modeling.
Ah, interesting. Cool.
All right, so nav bar. Okay, I have exactly what you have, so I'm ready.
So in that bar, we know it sits at the top like this, so we can think of this as the first div. We then have a logo area, right, where we put our company's name, which really could just be text in a larger format, and we can even find a nice font if we want. So then we usually have the blank space, and over here we have our buttons, which is actually navigation. Log in, log out, home, whatever. This is usually clickable to send home as well as maybe sometimes you'll have a home here as well. Those are becoming less and less. Usually this is the home click, but go ahead, Jeff.
So you called that the nav bar, but isn't that the header? The nav bar would just be the links that are on the, in your case, the right-hand side, correct?
Yeah, some people do argue that. Yeah, sometimes this is the nav bar, but sometimes a lot of people do consider the whole thing the nav bar. But yeah, it can be argued. Yeah, which one's which? Yeah. Whenever I use the term nav bar, I usually just include the whole thing because usually the header is where you put the nav bar anyway. Even if you do a side one, because I've also seen nav bars or headers that do this version as well, where now on the side of the screen it's always showable with the logo here and the buttons in the center here. They would still, this is no longer a header. It's got the same elements as this, but this would be called the nav bar on the left-hand side. Even though it's always visible, always present, it's still, this whole thing's called the nav bar. So that's why I got used to calling this the nav bar. But yeah, header's not wrong. I wouldn't say that's wrong.
The one on the side too is also sometimes called a sidebar because it's like,
Yeah.
because it does the same type of thing.
Yep. So for me, I just tend to call both of these nav bars because wherever I hold the navigation systems is what I call it. Because I usually tend to put the logic for navigation into these, and I just want them always there. So anyway, yeah, you're definitely not wrong. Nav bar, header, they kind of one the same. I feel like that was
Wasn't sure if there was a correct term you were supposed to, so term of art.
But there is a
Yeah,
there is
that's
a
what it
not
header.
wrong. I'll say that. Yeah.
There
Not
is a
wrong.
header. There are header tags where you do have a header.
Yeah.
That has a.
That's why I'm concerned about
And
that
footers
being the
too.
valid thing. Yeah, for that, like Jim, what you're saying there is one of the reasons why I'm partial against saying the term header, because header is actually a tag already present in HTML for header text, not for header sections. But Yeah, no, I definitely have seen this referred to as a header, and then yes, the actual buttons being considered the nav bar, because this is the item that'll also be compressed into the hamburger, not this area. So the header won't get compressed, just the buttons will get compressed.
No, there's only top nav, side nav.
Okay.
Top nav, side nav, header is for documents and for inside of the HTML.
All right.
So it wouldn't be called a header. It's either a top nav or a side nav. Or if you want to put, you can call it a banner, but there is no header.
Yeah, I've heard it said. I've heard that. You're right. I'm trying to remember if WordPress refers to this as the header. That's what I'm trying to remember right now. I've dealt with WordPress, and I feel like WordPress is considered this a header.
Yeah,
I hope
well,
I did it
you
wrong.
know,
It is
Word,
But
WordPress is
totally different.
you know, let's not discuss WordPress.
David.
As much as I also agree that I'm not a fan of WordPress, you will likely have to work with it at some point in your development career. So it's a love-hate kind of thing. You have to,
Yeah, if
be
they
okay
put you in
with
the basement and you have to work with WordPress, it's time to find a new job.
I've had in my project having the lock footer where where it will scroll and the footer's just locked in place.
I'll have to warn you with that, David, because technically one of the clients I'm working with, I'm helping them with their WordPress as we work towards making them an original site. But we do have to maintain their WordPress while the new site
Right,
is
you're
being
trying to get away
defined.
from WordPress, not stay
Right.
with it, right? Okay.
Exactly. We still have to. I still have to work on their WordPress while we create their new site.
Hey,
Which
listen,
is
I
like,
didn't say that every once in a while you won't have to touch a poopy diaper. The preference is you don't want to work with it. You know what I mean?
True.
It's not a constant thing.
Wow.
WordPress is dangerous, okay? As much as WordPress is great for growing the internet, it is a very dangerous site to use if you are not careful. It is heavily targeted by hackers, and I did a demonstration at one of our hackathons at a cybersecurity crypto hackathon we did in New York, where we took a server that we wanted to get root access to, found a dummy WordPress site on it. We were able to get in via the admin credentials, and we uploaded a plugin that gave us root access to the server. Took us like an hour or two to get access to the server because of the WordPress installation that they just did a basic installation on. So they would just play it. So this could have been on a server that the person was just playing with, because they had a running WordPress system on it that was technically pingable through network. We were able to gain root access to the server just because it was there. So you definitely have to be careful with WordPress if you're putting that on anything that's actually facing the internet. Make sure you have all the systems set up, securities in there, all the protections in place, because it is very easily hackable, especially if someone can log in and upload a plugin. So get that. So yeah. So mainly the main gist, though, again, we have our main div, the wrapper div, that is the navbar in general. We have our logo div that we want pushed to the left, and then we have our second div over here, which contains all of our navigation
Links.
buttons. Yep. So if we really want to break this down, we can see this as kind of a 2/3 kind of thing. But again, we can also use just something called space between. So this is something that Flexbox has called space between. We've done our flex, what was it? Flex 1 and flex 2 to make sure something takes up 1/3 and this one takes up 2/3. We've done that before. But this, of course, takes up the middle space. If we want systems just to take up the space they are able to take, we don't set their flex value to any sort of number. We leave that as 0. We don't give them a flex number so that they take up whatever they need, only the amount they need. What we can do, though, is set up something called for the align items, where we've done align items center. Remember that we've done that before? Align items, we've done center. There are other options. And one of the options is space between. This tells them to separate the items and put all the empty space in between the elements. And again, there can be multiple elements, and it'll evenly distribute the space in between, making sure that the first element and the last element is as close to the edge as it can be. And then anything in between will just share the empty space. Last one, of course, is also space around. What this does is it takes all the empty space and then puts it equally on the edges, in between, and edges. So you'll have even space between, all spaced out throughout the whole left, right, and center. of all the elements. So these are useful items you can use as well to get that look you're looking for. What we're looking for here is we want all that space between the logo and the buttons to be in between the two to keep them separate. We don't want any weird gaps on the right or the left. We just want all the gap in between, that space between. So we'll be using that. But let's start coding it and we'll start seeing those items come into play. Right. There, switch back to the mouse. So I'm gonna leave that to the right so you guys have a point of reference as what you see going on. What we'll also do actually, before we go any farther, on our app router, let's actually bring in and load the nav bar here just so we can see that looking. So we can just watch as we develop it, what happens. As we add syntax, as we add code, we'll see how it changes. So import nav bar. /nav bar. Replace our comment with the nav bar. So on the first save, we pop back over to our application. We'll see, well, that's not exactly what we wanted, right? So sure, we'll start with that. So we'll kind of work our way through that and see what we can do to fix that in a second. I do know why that happened, but we'll explain that in a second. So first off, we definitely don't want it side by side, do we? We want this top bottom, right? We want the nav bar on top and the body underneath, right? So this is where the change we made to our app CSS that made all of our divs flex had its first kind of negative effect. Flexbox by default does rows of data, so it does side by side. So normally HTML does block where it's top, it just stacks things one on top of the other. Flex by default puts things side by side. So that's when we need flex direction. So right in here under this div under our app router, we're just going to quickly add flex direction column. On all the elements inside of our nav bar to go top to, inside of our router to go top to bottom. There we go. We got our first fix. Look good? So that's our first fix. That's the only stuff we need to change outside of the nav bar. So we added it, we put our flex direction there, we're all good to go, right? There's our first item. Second thing I want to point out is if I start to scroll down, what happens?
You lose it, so you want it to be locked or fixed or floating.
Yep, so let's add our first bit. We're gonna go ahead and add a div to be the outstanding div. And let's add some style to it. Give it some style. First off, display. Well, actually, don't need to do that anymore because we have that set by default. All divs are defaulted to display flex now, so we don't need to do that anymore. We're going to go ahead and put in our background color that we wanted to do. So let's do background color. I'm going to go ahead and grab that color from our home and remove it from home now. So I'll take this, let's grab that, cut that, and get rid of that. Oops, yeah. Get rid of the color from our home. So our home will be back to a white screen, and our nav bar now will have the bluish green color. I forgot to do the double brackets. Don't forget, inline style has double brackets.
Could you post the hex for that in the chat somewhere?
Sure.
So we can grab it. 'Cause I don't have that yet.
Hey, Cliff,
No worries. Go for it.
you're going a little too fast for me.
Yeah,
slow
I
down.
can't
Sorry.
keep up with him at all. Just jumping screens.
Teal.
That I can do.
I just said teal.
I'm popping around too many screens, I realized.
Return.
So we'll go ahead and bring these up again. So app router, we'll start there. We brought the nav bar in. We added flex direction column, and we popped the nav bar on line 11.
So we did.
App router.
And that's under the routers folder under our components. if you don't have that open yet. I just got lucky that I already had it open.
Yes, sir.
And then you have nav bar. Okay, I got that one.
And we need another minute. Go to the next one then. The next update we did quick was on home. We took the background color and cut it out. So if you have that color there, you can go ahead and grab it and bring it into the nav bar. If you don't have the color, I did just post it in the Slack. So you can copy that and prepare to use it in nav bar, but don't bring it over yet. I'll show you how to add it in a second. But yeah, all we did in home was just remove the color. That one should be pretty quick. Anybody need more time on this? And for navbar, all we've changed so far in here is we added the div to the div, put the navbar inside the div, and then style background color, and then yeah, we bring the color over from the home. Again, if you don't have it, I just threw it in the Zoom chat, so you bring that in if you need. So what everyone should have in their home screen by now is this. This is what we want to see right now.
I don't. I wonder why. Hold on.
What's it looking like for you, if you can describe it?
So the background, the navbar is not showing me the teal color.
Did
Let
you
me see
save
if
it?
I made a mistake in the style. How div style
Make sure it's
background
background color spelt right,
Yeah.
and that you did save it. You can also try refreshing the page too.
Yes. Let's see. Ah, refreshing the page did it. There we go.
There you go.
I thought that it. Wait a minute.
It
No,
does
the-
tend to
it's-
auto refresh. Sometimes it might not trigger. Tries to auto refresh, but doesn't always do it. So whenever it doesn't auto do it, I'm like, you know what, just double check, refresh it. Before I assume my code's wrong, I'm gonna assume the browser's wrong first. 'Cause that's the quickest item to check.
Good to know. Hey.
Yep. Yeah, I always start with a refresh because that's kind of like the power on, power off. Did you power cycle it yet? Did I power cycle the web page yet? If it still shows up wrong, then I'm like, okay, it's something wrong with the code. All right. Let's show for this for a couple of seconds. Anyone not have this at the moment?
I do not.
You just grab what you got, or do you need to share screen?
I can share my screen.
Go for it. I hope I didn't lose my text. That's fine. I can redraw that. What do you have?
So I have background color.
Yep. That's
and
fine.
I was
So
just
what's
trying to do
your-
a different color, but mine. Let me refresh one more time.
Can't
Oh,
see the
never
words
mind.
there.
It was
Gotta
just
do the
taking a long
refresh?
time.
Yep.
Yeah,
All
a
good.
little bit.
Sir, did you try turning it on and off again?
Well, I did hit refresh and my button just didn't go anywhere. I guess it needed one more refresh.
You just be finicky. Don't ask me why. They just are. All right. So hopefully by now everyone has the basic kind of bluish green nav bar with our nav bar to the left, and then our welcome on the bottom. So, what do I do? Get show video panel. Make sure I got everybody's faces so I can see the confused looks if I need to. If I need to. All right. So we got that first. We still do not have the locked bar. We'll get to that in a second. The next item actually is going to add is going to add that. So position is how we position the item on the page. The default, if I remember correctly, is relative. I want to say. I think it's relative. I think that's the default. I think so. If anyone wants to confirm that, please let me know. But I think it's relative.
Is there a reason it doesn't autocomplete to C position?
What's that?
Said, I wonder why mine doesn't autocomplete the seek position like yours is.
It should.
Yeah, unless it's like lagging from the computer. But again, the extensions I have that you would care about. ESLint,
It's fine. I'm not gonna hold this up.
NPM,
just
these
wondering why
NPM
mine
ones.
isn't.
So the NPM IntelliSense is a good one to have. And then, yeah, Colorizer actually is built in now. You just gotta go to the settings to enable it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I don't have those, so I can always look for them later.
Yeah, definitely these two,
Okay.
the NPM and
Let's
NPM
continue.
IntelliSense and ESLint. Those are the three you definitely should grab. And then bracket colorizer, the bracket colors that are in there now are built into Visual Studio Code. Just gotta go to your settings to enable it. You don't need the extension anymore, and actually they tell you to stop using it. It was such a popular extension that Visual Studio Code just added it to the editor. It's built in now. Anyway, so yeah, position. So normally you get relative. We're going to switch that now to absolute. Absolute says, hey, I'm going to give the absolute position on the web page in pixels of the X and Y coordinates of the top left corner of where this belongs. And so that's what I'm telling it. I'm telling it out of the, and I did lose my drawings, dang it. So when you use absolute, you're saying out of the box that is this div, I'm going to tell you the X and Y coordinates of this corner. If I don't type those in, the default is 0, 0, or here in the upper corner of the website. What this also does, though, is make sure that now when you do this, though, all other components or elements on the HTML page now ignore this element, this component, or this item. Yeah, element in this case. It's an HTML element. Talk about it now. The HTML element is now ignored by other elements, meaning that they don't recognize its space, they don't respect its space, and will actually, and this can actually even encroach on other elements. We're going to see that in a second once we save this, and now go back to the page. So I saved it. If I go back now, take a look what happened. Love the reaction. Some people are like, oh, hello. Because this is now an absolute item, this is now going to push up and say, hey, I will take up the space now because the space isn't given. It's also not guaranteed to take up the entire width. So we lose the width capability, where it's going to take up the entire width, and it will also make sure that the home components div there, the container div that we created, is now like, oh, there's nothing above me. The container div no longer sees anything above it. It's not there. And so it's going to just push back up to the top and be like, hey, I got to take up the space. So we got to make some more changes as we go. The next one we're going to do, of course, is give it back that width. So back to the width, not window. Width. 100% width. We want to take up the whole space that's available to itself. So we do that next. We'll pop over. We do see that happened. It's on top. We do want to make sure that it stays on top, though, right? One of the things we are expecting it to be on top because it is at the top of the HTML. There's always a chance that something could try to pop on top. Does anyone know the attribute for deciding what's on top of what? If you mess with images, you might also know what it's called.
It's the Z level.
Layer.
Yep, Z level in HTML. That is called the Z index.
Oh, index.
Yep. And so again, indexing, computer science stuff. So in this, we're just going to set it to a high number, just that way it's always given high priority. So I tend to just give the nav bar the 9999 Z index. That way, in case anything else I put has like 100 or 1,000, the nav bar still gets priority. I give it a nice high Z index. That is, the nav bar should always be there on the top, front and center, available to use. Nothing should float on top of the nav bar, right? So for me, nav bar always gets 9999.
I appreciate
Well
the
over-
reference, Cliff.
Well over
What?
9,000.
Oh. It is all powerful. At least the nav bar should be. Again,
Over 9,000.
you missed it. You're late. Sergio already said it. I will say, so this is something I've had in my code before. You guys can add this one, is more optional because I did say by default, absolute will default to 00, but you'll see a lot of people go ahead and enter it just for explicitness of top and left. Set those to 0, just to be a little more, just to be explicit that we want this at the top left of the screen. So this is how you tell it the corner. So top is kind of like the top here is at 0 and left is here. You can, of course, you really should only use 2 of these. You shouldn't use top left and right or top and bottom. You shouldn't use left and right or top and bottom. You're trying to give it a 2-item coordinate where it should start the element. I've never done it where I've done top and bottom together or left and right together to see what it would do in HTML. I tend to only use 2 of the positionings because I'm just trying to tell it where the corner goes. That's my main goal. I'm trying to get it to point to one of these 4 corners, say, hey, start the element here. I might want to, if you want something to be right aligned, you would go right, left, right top. So we want to make sure that this corner is telling us, hey, we want something that's absolute, like let's say a close button. Where do we want the close button on a element to normally go?
Top right.
Usually on the top right.
Yeah, right. We tend to hover them on the top right. And so we would use those items here to say, hey, go top right. And we set the right to be, what is it, 100% or width. Set it to the width of the item. So being explicit is nice. Again, this element in this system is not necessary. Top left 0, 0 is the default, but it's nice to have it there just to be explicit. And I'm going to put it there so you guys can see it when you do come back later to realize, hey, this is positioned to the top left. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give it a static height, and there's a reason for that. And I want to guess what the reason is.
Is it a static height?
Height.
So that doesn't take up the whole screen?
Not just, that's one reason, yeah, definitely, so it doesn't take up the whole screen, but we know it's not doing that yet. There's another reason. Any other guesses?
Keeping mobile in mind.
Not intentionally, but I think it does. That wasn't my reasoning for it, but not a bad reason to have it. Any other guesses?
When we
Oh,
zoom
you
in on the
should-
page,
Zoom in on the page? What do you mean?
so it stays the same size. I don't know. I was thinking. So when we zoom in on
Consistent
the
size is
page,
good, but
it's-
why would we care that the nav bar is a consistent size?
I keep trying to think if you scroll down, the nav bar just, but that's not it.
Is there
For
anything
like a
here that
big
we?
monitor, it's not gonna be super thin.
That could be something. But there's something, again, there's another reason why I need to know the height of the nav bar. Is there something here that I need to push out of the way? Am I missing something
Yeah,
here?
it's missing H1 right now.
What
being
happened to my
covered by
welcome to
nav bar.
Expressian?
I
Right?
noticed that, but I forgot about that.
Yeah, it's underneath the nav bar. My welcome to Expressian text is underneath the nav bar. And so
So
at
you're
some
gonna
point,
need to make the main screen more than 75.
right. I need to push it down. Whatever I'm showing on the home screen should automatically have a buffer for the nav bar. So any screen, every screen needs to have a buffer to push the content down underneath the nav bar. And so having the nav bar set to a static height makes it easier for me to make sure I push down the data accurately.
Can I ask you a
So that's
question
nice.
then?
Go for it.
Just because I've done a little bit of CSS and I'm curious about this, then why wouldn't navbar be its own container so that it doesn't contain, it's not part of the container you're using for your main div, which is where, obviously that text is. It would be separate than that.
Trying to follow what you mean. The reason why it's overloading it is because it's absolute. Once it's absolute, all other elements ignore its position, height, width, all of it. It doesn't pay attention to it. It doesn't see that image, so it can't adjust itself automatically.
So if you had multiple divs,
Uh-huh.
like currently right now you have a div in there that's
Mhm.
being used for your navbar.
Mhm.
If you made another div underneath it, that would be 2 divs right on top of each other.
Oh, so you're saying like
It doesn't-
here. Like that?
Yeah, if you made a second div underneath and that's where your text for your thing is, then it doesn't matter how big your navbar is because it's a totally different, it's a different container that's in,
Yes.
so you don't need to account for that 75.
But again,
pixels.
I need to make
I'm
this
asking.
div a certain size, wouldn't I? So this div would still need to be a certain size to make sure it has that spacer that the nav bar is taking up. So this would still need to have the 75 height on this div so that I push everything below it down. This would still need to know how big to be because this div can't see this div.
So if that's a different div, then why is it layering over your text, your H1
Yeah.
tag?
absolute. Once you say something is absolute, it is there on the page in that position, period. That's where it belongs. I'm sticking it there on top of everything else. And again, the other elements ignore that element now. They don't know its position. They don't know its height. They don't know its width. They don't know how to move around it. That's one of the negative sides of an absolute element. Why you only want to use them for items that need to be permanently affixed to a certain part of the page. Yeah. So that's one of the main reasons why we need to know. And even then, like I said, even without that, even with another div, I would still need to know the height of the nav bar so I can make sure that that smaller div is the same height. That would be a nice technique to make sure that I don't need to, on the other pages, put a margin or a spacer. So actually, I might even use that here. That's actually a nice idea for that, but I would have to add a fragment. So we'll do that in a second. But
I was thinking that they stack on top of each other, and you saying absolute just says this div is always on the top. Doesn't matter what stack is underneath it. If you stack, you know, 3 keyboards on top, if I write absolute on the one that's on the top, always the one on the top, regardless of what's underneath it.
Exactly. Yep. And yeah, so the main thing you can imagine right now is that home is right here, right underneath it. And so before the absolute, they were stacked on top, and home had to make space for the nav bar because the nav bar was relative. They took care of each other. Once we switch it, I don't think it's relative because relative is actually how you get the X modal. What is it by default? What is a default position?
It's a 75 pixel also for mobile, so the nav bar would be okay on that.
What's that?
Is also the 75 pixel height also good for a mobile app for that height?
It's fine. Yeah, it's a fine size. And again, that size of 75 is just one I've found that I like. You can set your header to whatever size you can want. You can make a nice thin header if you want, a thin nav bar. So you can set that to like 50 or 40.
Logo.
Yeah, exactly. You adjust it to your logo 100%. Oh, static is default. Right, that's right. Static, not relative. Relative is absolute within the component it's in, within the element that it's in. Right, I was goofing that up. That's why I was like, I'm not right with what I'm saying. Absolute is similar to absolute. Sorry, relative is similar to absolute. Relative just means absolute within the element it's inside. That's why we can have an X on top of a modal. So a little pop up here can have an X in the upper right hand corner because we make that X relative inside the modal. And so we can then do top left or top right within that element. So that's the difference. Yeah, static by default. Sorry. Surprised Eric didn't call me out on that one. Did he actually? I see something in the chat.
No, he just asked me to get a spell checker too, but I'll worry about that later.
Wait, why?
Spell checkers are good.
Spell checkers
just so
are
I
good.
don't mistype.
Yeah, but no, spell checkers are good if you get
I
them.
benefit from those two.
Yeah, you can, especially when you start building your own dictionaries as well, because then it becomes better and better. That you're less typing and it finds all those your user ones.
Yeah, with this, we should have what we need. And actually, I'm going to test something. So this might be nice for you guys for the future. So I'm going to do fragment, bring fragment in. Because again, we can only have one, we only have one tag be the parent tag. Everything needs to be contained inside of a tag. So if I want 2 divs that are not a div inside of a div, I need a fragment to hold them. So that way it doesn't render anything to the HTML. I was gonna do a quick div.
So Leah's having technical difficulties. I think she might have been kicked and she might come back. So
thank you for the heads up. I just heard something in Slack. I mean, that's what I'm guessing you got that from, right?
Yep.
Cool. So I don't have to go check that. Nice. Right. This will work. So it would be nice if I can just do that, because then you won't have to add this to every single page. Slash a self-closing div. So this is acting as the spacer. It's hiding underneath the other div. So this is hiding underneath the nav bar, and what the goal of this is that every single page now should be pushed down 75 pixels automatically. Instead of having to add a margin to all your components, to your container and stuff like that, it's just going to have a hidden div underneath. Let's see if that works.
You spelled height wrong.
It did.
he needs a spell checker.
Yep. Hey, look, it did. Cool. Nice idea, Jeff. I don't know if you intended that, but that works. That's cool. I don't know why I haven't done that before. That's a brilliant idea, actually. So
Can you hold there for a second? Mine does.
Yeah, I was
for
gonna.
some reason.
No worries. I was gonna make sure everybody got what they wanted. So I was gonna stop here for a second.
So
And
weirdly
it's
enough,
back.
mine did it on its own, which is why I was asking that. Because I
Really?
started typing all the things that you did and I added in height. Well, you know what? Actually, again, I didn't do the refresh. That's what it was.
Ah,
Why
okay.
is mine not auto refreshing? That's weird.
Yeah, like I said, it can be finicky. You could try reloading the app. So kill it and then npm start again. Try that. See if that'll bring back the auto refresh.
Should probably just close it and reopen it because I did just put those new plugins.
So we're actually upgrading the nav bar from our Key Likes app now. So now the nav bar is going to be even more useful and it's more dynamic. I like this one with the built-in spacer.
So where did you add that spacer in? Just to the nav bar
Yeah.
itself?
Yep. So we added a fragment tag because again, as we've said before, for all React components, there is a single parent tag that contains all child tags. You can't have a tag, close it, and then another tag. So fragment is a React tag that, or a React component that simply just displays all the children. It doesn't actually render anything to the page. We used to have divs or a wrapper component, or what's called a higher order component, which I hated those things. They sound very confusing.
Say
HOCs were
fragment?
annoying. Yeah, fragment. And you import that from React, line 1.
What did that exactly do? What's the difference?
What's that?
What did that exactly do? The fragment part, you said it?
I was getting to that, yeah. So what fragment does is just a container component. So it just allows us to put two tags or two elements side by side without rendering another tag above. So in older React, before fragment existed, I'd have to do this if I wanted these two divs together. And of course, that's having a div actually renders something to the HTML, and this is gonna throw all of our stuff off, right? This is gonna throw stuff off. So we don't want that. Fragment is a way to contain these two divs inside of a single component without rendering anything to the HTML. No tags get added to the HTML website when the fragment gets loaded. Fragment's just a container component. Don't do this on yours, but if I delete the two fragments, you'll see it's yelling at me.
And div underneath
See?
it.
So I delete the two fragments yelling at me because I have two divs side by side and I can only have a single parent div instead of a component or a single tag as the parent tag. So yeah, fragment allows me to bundle together separate elements or separate components without rendering anything to the HTML.
Very nice.
Oh yeah. Trust me, once they added the fragment tag, I was like, thank you. Because I hated having to try to wrap things or make multiple components. It was so annoying. And yeah, like I said, there was something called higher order components that were just annoying to try to understand exactly what they did or how they worked. And so fragment is so much nicer to have. Early React could be annoying at times. React is so much better now. So. All right, so I'm just going to show it. You hope right with that finished, your screen should look like this now. Anyone need any more time?
I just need a few seconds because I closed it and I did the npm start, so I'm waiting for it to start up.
No worries. Anybody else? Any questions about any of the style elements that we've used or anything that's going on here? Do we understand what it's doing? Feel free to ask any questions. That'll give time for people to type out. And that's the thing I'll throw out there again. Asking questions slows me down so people can catch up. So that's why, again, if you're worried like, oh, I shouldn't ask a question because people might think I'm dumb, they actually will probably be like, thank you, because then they have time to catch up without having to admit that they're not keeping up. So you might be helping someone to catch up. All right.
So
I always thought that there's no dumb questions,
I agree
especially
too.
because someone else might be afraid to ask that question. So by asking that, you're helping everyone else out.
Oh, what was the story I heard, the concept I heard that made me be more open to asking questions? Yeah, so there's no such thing as a dumb question because all questions are dumb, technically. You ask a question because you don't know the answer. However, if you ask a question and get the answer, you are no longer dumb. By not asking the question, you remain dumb. So dumb people are people who don't ask questions. So that's what you got to remind yourself is yes, there are no such thing as dumb questions because all questions are dumb because you're dumb by not knowing the answer. By once you get the answer, you are no longer dumb. So who cares if you're dumb?
True.
You stop being dumb the second you ask a question. Okay, so what's going on? Anyone see anything?
No, I just asked her if she was all set before we moved too far ahead of her.
Why?
She said she's good, so she might be joining back in.
Oh, Leah's already
Back.
Oh, okay, good.
here. No worries, she's been here.
There's so many people
Such a
on my
nice guy,
screen that
Jeff.
she's not in there anymore.
No worries.
Listen, she actually just spoke up and said that she was falling behind. I was too, and I was like, oh, I don't want to hold everybody else up if I'm the only person asking that question. I think that's my problem, is that I won't ask because I'm like, I know I type a lot slower than everyone else. So I'm just gonna keep watching and I'll just go back and watch the video. But that just is pushing
do
me
it.
further behind.
Yeah.
So
Don't do that. Feel free to mention it. I'm fine with it. And again, when you say that, you can also, if you do give that away, say that you're a little behind, that can also tempt other people to be like, oh, wait, we're stopping. I can ask a question. So it's an evil, like kind of self-perpetual cycle. Someone behind is afraid to admit that they're behind because they don't want to hold people back. Well, other people are like, I don't want to ask a question because I don't want to stop the forward momentum. And yet by asking those questions, you can help those behind catch up. And for those who are behind, who then say I'm behind, can help open the door for someone who has a question to finally feel okay asking the question. So you both help each other out. So don't be afraid to ask me to stop. Don't be afraid to ask a question because your question, whether even if someone else doesn't have the same question, you still might be helping someone in another way.
So you said that for position, the default setting was
Static, not
static,
absolute. Yeah, not relative. Relative is something different.
relative, right? That's what I was wondering.
Yep, you're good. I was goofing on that, and as soon as I knew my back of my mind, I was like, I'm saying this wrong, and it was an itch that was annoying me, so that's why I had to double check. It's like relative is something else. Yeah, I remember that relative is just the absolute for within the container. Absolute is absolute within the view. So absolute is the absolute of the view, or really the whole HTML page of the HTML page in general, the whole document. And then relative is the positioning within a element. So
And static, I imagine it's just
standard. Yeah.
standard, no rules, does whatever.
Yeah. The standard behavior you see HTML do is hard to really explain what it does, but it just stacks one on top of the other.
Yeah.
Stacks them one on top of the other, top to bottom. Anyone, everyone good? How are you doing, Jeff?
I'm good.
Good. All right. So
Believe it or not, this stuff is actually what I'm good at. I'm just a slow typer. That's all.
no worries. Tons of people can be slow typers. I'm used to slow typers. I know I'm not a slow typer, but I've dealt with a lot of type people who don't type fast, so I'm okay with it. Don't feel bad that you're slowing me down. That's a good thing. I know I can type too fast sometimes. Cool. So we got that. So we have all this. Next thing we want to do is remind ourselves what we're bringing into our nav bar is that we want a component over here, or an element over here that's going to be our logo, and then we have the elements over here that are going to be our nav buttons. And so since we're going to have two elements, we want them side by side. What do we need to do with flex to do that? So we know that default behavior of HTML is to go top to bottom, right?
We need to change it back to being left to right, correct?
Correct. Yep. So reminder for everyone, that's flex direction. We want that to be a row. So we want all the elements inside to be a row. So to confirm that, I'm just going to add another H2 or H1 again, saying buttons. See what that looks like. Well, it's side by side, but that's not what we want, is it?
No.
Not quite.
No.
So now I'm going to add the other item that I mentioned, and this is the align items. Oh, I forgot the comma, that's why. items, I believe it is, space. Oh no, align content, right, sorry. Justify, ooh, we'll find out, one of them. This again, you'll never get it perfectly right, space between. I think that's the right one, that is not, I think it might be justify, let's find out. You know what? Inspect, and this is the technique that I use constantly. I'll inspect the nav bar. I'll come in here now, and on that div right here, I'm gonna now mess with the align and stuff like that, play with these. So. Space, that's the behavior we want, right? Logo to the left, buttons to the right, with everything else in the space between. That looks correct, right?
Yep.
And what we're gonna do with align content, we're gonna actually make that center. If one thing you want to know is that justify and align are opposites to each other. One of these, depending on your flex direction, will handle the X and Y coordinate styling, and one will do the, one of these will do left to right, one of them will do top to bottom. So one does the X axis, one does the Y axis. Because we just found out that the justify content is doing left to right content, splitting things to be a left and right. Align content is going to do your up and down. And so we want that horizontally centered, right? We want our content to be horizontally centered inside the div. So that's where we're going to do align content center. So we're going to bring these over into our nav bar now. Center. Justify content, space between, save. I'm gonna go ahead and, since I edited this, I am gonna refresh it just to make sure that my edits are gone, make sure we get the same behavior. Looks fine. So I'm gonna pause for a second, let you guys get that going. So flex direction, align content, and justify content. That was a weird like hiccup thing. And we'll tell you, there is other ways of doing this stuff. If you do actually go back and look at our nav bar from the previous application, you'll see that we actually moved these items to the left by doing justify content on this item and doing flex end.
I was gonna ask you about that, justify, I mean, flex start and flex end.
Yep. Those are the
I have
ones as
my
well.
buttons in the wrong spot.
All right. Let's take a look what they are. Stop. Go for it. I want to see where your buttons are floating. Ooh, hello. All right. Look, it's wrapping it. Why is it wrapping it? Shouldn't need to.
Mine's doing the same thing.
Can you show your code?
Yeah, let's look at the code quick.
Background color, position, yeah.
Center. It's fine. Let's go back to the web page now. Yeah, nothing there looks wrong. That looks right. Unless someone else sees something that I'm not. I don't see anything spelled
No.
wrong or anything.
His div does need to be indented, but that's just me being
Yeah.
jerk.
No, that's something I was gonna say later, but once we fixed it, but you just beat me to it. So everything looks spelled good. So let's go back to the website and let's do an inspect on it and see what we get going on. That's the next best thing to do. So why is it taking a poll width? So let's just space between. Oh, wait a minute. Why does it say place content? Oh yeah, place content. I think is the and the how it adjusts it, right? Because flex is another compiled variation.
I think it's where his H1 is placed. It doesn't look like it's placed in the right div. That's why it's under it and not in it.
just real quick, go back to your code for 2 seconds. I just feel weird seeing place content. I'm pretty sure you put justify in a line, right? Yeah, you did. A line justify. Okay, so yours is compiling it to that. All right, fun. Why do you do that? All right, go back to it. That's fine. I just want to double check. I know the Java, the HTML does that sometimes, but it's still fun. So yeah, click on the H1 navbar. Yep. And I'm trying to figure out why this is taking up 100% of the width and not doing auto on it, which it should be doing by default.
With 100%.
Yeah, it's taking up the
Should
whole
that be
width.
auto instead?
Well, that's it. The width shouldn't be taking up the whole width. I'm trying to figure out why yours is doing that. It should just be taking up the space it needs, nothing more, nothing less. But it looks like your settings there are the same as mine, so you don't have these sort of weird things happening in your user agent style sheet that's doing it. Click on the div again. Make sure that our div is set to flex, display flex. Scroll down a little bit on this. Not there, sorry, on the element style. Where is my annotations? In here. Scroll down here.
Oh.
Oh, yeah, you have app TSS. Your divs are defaulting to display block. So go back to your code. You want to go to app CSS file. You want to add just right at the top or at the bottom, doesn't really matter where, just somewhere in here, we want to do div. I think we did it at the bottom of mine. So if you go to the bottom of the page, underneath keyframes, the whole thing, just enter. Just type in div, space, curly bracket.
Display
9.
flex.
Yep.
What is it?
Display flex.
Yep. Display
that?
colon
I know,
string flex. Display colon then flex, and then a semicolon. No string. It's just text.
I had that in there, but I had it in the under
Semicolon.
a wrong curly braces.
And then just to match the same styling, put the display flex on its own line, like you see in the above examples. Yep. That's it. Save it. Back to the page. Yeah, no one here really would know that that's the expectation. So yeah, let's refresh it. Give a second to reload. That is just my prior
You added
experience
that
with.
at the
Oh, there
end
we go.
last time.
Awesome.
Yeah, we did that last time. Yeah, it's just having you guys know that what the problem was. That's just me having familiarity with HTML. I've done enough with it that yeah. Not that I'm happy with that. I don't like dealing with HTML, but as a developer, you sometimes have to be okay with coding and stuff you don't like to code. So as much as I don't like CSS, I've done enough with it that I've gotten okay at it.
Pretty sure that's every job to do stuff you
Yeah.
don't like.
100%. And CSS is my version of that. Front end work, but I do all right with it. At least I've gotten better at it. I used to be really bad at my front end stuff. I look back some of the old front end stuff I used to design, and I'm like, it's so gross. I'm much happier with what I build now. Still not the most modern stuff. It's still way better than it used to be. Anyway, anyone else not have this layout we need to take a look at? Okay, so next up, let's actually switch this to our logo. All right. Let's do style. Why is it upset? I'm so confused. Okay, let me put this Expressian, put that in there. So sort of like it's an empty tag, blah, blah, blah. Style, bracket. Why am I not getting the normal behavior? Now it's acting up. It won't give me my stuff. Of course not.
It's because you're showing
Oh, there it
us,
goes.
that's why.
Weird. Now it's back. Family. I don't know what that was. Anyway. Let's go and just do some fun. We'll do some monospace so it kind of looks like geek typing. So monospace is what we're familiar with. So all the font you use in Visual Studio Code is a monospace text. Monospace just means that every single character takes the same amount of space. So it looks very much code-like. So we do that. We can save it quick. We just want to take a look, see if we like that. I think to make it a little bigger, maybe make it bold. And yeah, if anyone wants to share a font from Google Fonts, we can definitely do that. But I want to save a little time because we're already at 8:46. So do that. We'll go ahead and do font weight, or right? Weight. Sweet. No. Oh, right. Oh, I forgot the comma. That's why. Weight. Bold. We'll do font size. And again, this is where we're going to use our words. Dynamic sizing constraints. We're not going to use pixels on text most times. We want to use something different. So we don't want them being massive on mobile and small on desktops. And so what we're going to use is we're going to do 1.5 EM. We have to wrap that in a string because that is not recognized by JavaScript. So again, EM, that is your relative concept. It's based on the HTML root element. So save that. We'll pop back over and see if we need to adjust. Definitely need to make that bigger. 2 EM. Let's play with it a bit. Oh, 3 is not bad. What do you guys think? We do 2.5 maybe? What do you think?
But I like that.
I like that size.
Cool. We're also going to do something else with this just to see what it looks like. Again, this is a good practice thing. We're going to do margin. Top to bottom, I'm going to do 0 margin. Why is it not centering the item like it should? Because of the Q, the align. Looks like I did align content, not align items. God dang it. I know why. 1 second. So 0 from top to bottom. I'm going to do a common item is do a factor of 8 for pixels on left to right margins. So 8 px. Oop, I forgot to hit the px. Yelling at me. What do you think? More or less? What do you think?
A little more, I think 20.
It's supposed to have space on the top, so.
We will get that in a second. Yeah. I realized that in this div, I did align content, and this is supposed to be align items. So we'll fix that in a second. So left to right, 20 pixels looks good. And again, it is going to add the pixels on the right hand side, but that's fine in case these buttons do start to encroach on it. We don't want it getting on top of it. We want to make sure that it word wraps in that case, or that it wraps down or does something else. So margin on the left and right is good. So now to fix what I did there, let's go ahead first and add these to our in here. So font size we ended up doing 2.5. Margin 0. Do strength 0, 20 px. Got those. And then all we're going to do here in the upper div is where you see align content. We're going to change that to align items. That's going to put it horizontally up and down, and that'll add the margins to the top and bottom automatically.
What is 2.5 EM?
It is a ratio against the root element size. So it's a what's what we're looking for? A relative or dynamic sizing item. Instead of using pixels or anything like that, we're using this is mobile friendly, in other words.
Okay.
So it's saying base the size of this text on the root element of the website. So on mobile devices, EM is smaller, and so it'll work better on mobile devices.
There a difference between double quotes and just single quotes when it
In
comes to
JavaScript?
CSS?
No, and again, this is JavaScript. Don't forget. Right now we're in JavaScript. We're not actually in CSS. because CSS uses dashes for font weight, not the JavaScript syntax. So because yeah, if you look back when we did on Mike's, when we fixed his div display, we didn't do display with double, we didn't do flex with double quotes. CSS doesn't use quotes at all.
Mm.
So there is no difference because CSS doesn't know what they are, or at least doesn't pay attention to them.
Can you repeat that again? What's the difference between align items and content?
Align items, that's what it was.
Align items is what I needed. I can't say for sure the difference between the two because I tend to just fiddle with the 4 items. So there's align items, justify items, align content, and justify content. I tend to just mess with the 4 until I get the behavior I want. So if one doesn't work, I just switch the other. I know that what they do is relative or is connected to your flex direction, how they change and stuff like that. So like I said, a lot, again, CSS, you'll learn, especially with a lot of developers, and except for front-end developers. CSS is a throw in, is a guess and check kind of process. You get better the more you do it because you tend to remember what worked and what didn't. But even then, a lot of times it's just guess and check.
Copy and paste. You do it one time and you save it. That's a framework.
Yep. And that's why we're building our common components. Again, all these common components have a bunch of CSS in there that I tested in other apps that I liked how it looked, so I'm keeping it. Like, I don't have to rewrite that CSS. My rounded buttons, I don't want that. I don't want to have to rewrite that again. So I kept my rounded buttons. Little cards that I built for stuff, I don't want to rewrite those, so I kept those because that CSS for those little cards that hover and stuff, not rewriting that. I got it working. I'm keeping it. We got that, we save it, go back to our web page, just reload to make sure that we're using the most recent version, that all of our edits that we did manually are gone. We still get the same behavior, so we're good. Again, a lot of times this can be just a nice simple text. The only reason this should be an image is if you have colors and stuff. Even then, span tags can work unless it has to match a specific look. Text is fine here. This gives you that. The main reason why we like the concept of text here is because depending on the size of, again, the mobile device and stuff, this can stretch, it can deform, it can move around and not pixelate. Text can be blown up, it can be shrunk, and you don't see pixelation. With images, you have to have the right resolution or they can end up being blown up or it can end up being pixelated. So be very careful with images, and playing with images can be annoying. So 9 times out of 10, if you can get away with text for the logo here, get away with it, use it. But if you have to use a logo, you definitely can. Just replace this with an image tag. So in your application, you would just replace this H1 with an image tag. And that's pretty much the only thing that you would keep is the margin, and then use other image as CSS.
Hey, Cliff.
We got that? Go for it.
It's not actually a question. It's just want to tell you something. Maybe it's interesting for the whole class. I got an email from Kayak. I don't know if you know, it's like a travel website. Yeah, they sent me the challenge for like the first step for the hiring process.
Oh, cool.
And the first step is actually create a web page, like a copy of that web page from the mock that they gave me. So 2 things. First, I wanted help from you from one thing, and maybe, I don't know, if someone else wants to check it out.
Again.
After class.
Yep, after class.
Yeah, of course, that's better.
So all I'm doing here quick is we also want to make sure that this item is clickable so we can go back to the home screen. So I'm just going to do that. This. Don't want to do that yet.
You want to wrap it in never mind, continue.
Right. No, we're going to use the on-click method. We could also wrap it in a nav link. That might make our life easier, actually. So, no, that's what I'm trying to debate right now. What do I want to do? We might actually hold off on that, making this a clickable item yet right now, because we don't need that for this to work. We're going to have just a home button. So, you know what? We're going to skip that for the moment.
could just put a home on the other side that takes
Yeah,
you
so-
home for now.
Yeah, I want to do that for now, just to make, just so that we can speed up a little bit. I'm trying to figure out what items are the most important items for you guys to know. That item isn't that important for this. It's not needed. We can just make a home on the buttons. So yeah, we're just gonna go with that instead. All right, so we have these. Next thing we want to do actually is create a nav button because we're gonna have multiple of these buttons. They need to behave a certain way. We want to make sure that they can light up on hover, that they're clickable. So these are a little more fancy than just an H1 tag. And since we're probably gonna have more than one of them, what does that mean? What should we create?
Its own class.
I
Opponent?
wouldn't use the word class. Technically, yes, in the sense of Java, but in the sense of React, what's the term?
Div then.
Not a div. What's the React term? Do you know?
Component?
Component. Yes, that's the term for React. Technically, yeah, you can definitely argue it's a class, and for a long time, React used to be, components used to be classes. So now they're just functional components. But yeah, original React components were class components. They
So it
were
would be nav,
classes.
it would be nav bar and nav links.
I wouldn't use nav links because I think nav link is already a term used by React Router DOM. So I tend to use the term button, but nav link is also good, but I use the term button because they act like buttons to me. They have the on hover and they react when you click them.
React.
Pun intended. Not really. It's totally unintentional.
Is it still
that
under?
Still
Okay,
under
it's
nav
still
bar.
under
Yep.
All right, so new file.
Because these are going to be only used by the nav bar. I'm not going to be using these elsewhere on the site. All right, same challenge, build our basic default component. So not yet, because I'm going to do the basics first. Don't worry about the text in the H1, it's just something there. So even though I put button, if you put nav button, that's fine. The goal is just to put something here. Maybe in a minute for the basic component.
Like the two good things is text and SVG files because they both are scalable. No matter what size you put your web page, it's scalable.
That's the point I was talking about with the logo. That's why I said if you
Yeah.
can get away with text for your logo, do that because that gets the same behavior as an SFG, as an SVG, like the icons. So especially if you can find a way to, if you can get someone to make an icon out of your logo, go for it. I don't know how to do it, so don't ask me. But if you can get your logo turned into an icon, that makes it scalable. Logos that are images are not scalable, at least not like text and SVG. So
I know you could use Inkscape to actually trace the drawing and then save it as an SVG and
don't ask me how to do that. I know people say that you can do it like that, and I'm like,
I've
trace
done
what?
things like that.
Just
I
use
can
Canva.
do that and I know how to do it. It is kind of a pain, but it can be done.
Just use Canva. Takes 30 seconds and it's free.
cool. To share that. Yeah, main thing, yeah, with that, yeah, with the logo and so with that area, just yeah, anywhere that there's the chance for things being changed on different different devices. Text is going to be the better scalable or dynamic item. Images are fine, they can work, but just again be aware of them that they can also run into problems. And so your logo, the first thing at the top of the screen that people are going to see, you want that to look as good as you can. So that's why text is going to be good because you want them to see that they are where they belong. But at some point, yes, you do want to eventually get an image there because, you know, eventually a company becomes their logo. All right.
Logo doesn't have to be in your nav bar.
What's that?
No, it doesn't have to be in your nav bar. It can be somewhere else.
Very true. Be right on top of the image. Or it can be part of, yeah, it can be on top of the splash image, can be somewhere else on the page. No, I'm just giving you guys the basics because again, you guys aren't being front end developers. I just want something basic for your front end for your project. Nothing too fancy. Maybe Eridan might need something fancy because he's trying to go for a front end right now, I believe.
I'll take front end right now. Gets me out of my job.
I'm going to bring React Router DOM in because we're going to be actually navigating, we're going to be adjusting or playing with the router. We're going to be changing the location of our user. So we're moving them around, changing where they are. And so because the React Router DOM is in charge of deciding what pages to show, we want to use React Router DOM's links to make sure that we avoid the default behavior of clicking on an A tag. When you normally click on an A tag, that actually navigates you to another page, which, as we know, if we refresh our page on React, that could reset state on devices and log us out. And so because we don't want state lost, we're going to use the React Router DOM to make sure that we change the URL, or sorry, to make sure we change the route on the browser, but we don't refresh the page. We just reload the components and just trigger re-renders or trigger a state change. So what we're going to bring in is called nav-link. That is a component that we can use that is clickable. We can also give it, we can also put it inside of we can also give it style and changes. So we can be able to do that. So in this case, let's go ahead and type out the style we want. Actually, I don't think we get there. Well, we're going to do it a different way first, but then I'm going to make some changes. But first, let's do this. So I want to make sure I can get the predictive text. So get rid of that. We'll go ahead and do nav-link. The text we want to display in the nav-link is just going to be the children or the label we give to it. So we're going to do props.label. So we're going to call it a label. And this is, again, kind of similarity with the term button. So because I use the term button, I call it a label. And so this is going to, again, be one of the items we send to it. And so if we really wanted to, we can do a import prop types. Type. Do a simple button. This stuff is important if you don't do this, so don't worry about it. Types. Types dot string. Just so we know that we're expecting some sort of string to show in the button itself. That's the text. It's gonna be like home, login, sign up, register, whatever the text for our button is gonna be, that's gonna be our label. Did I spell label wrong? I did. Label, not label, label. Label, something.
Label.
I did it at BLE. I don't know how you say that.
That broke my brain. That broke my brain because I mean I can read it. I read this label as well. Label.
Yeah, you spelled it right.
Yeah.
All right.
Wait. Which way is right? Is it LABEL or is it BLE?
No. Yeah, that's right.
This is right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but it would still be pronounced the same way.
I had it wrong.
If you spell it the other way.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't know. It, like Sergio said, it broke my brain. It broke mine too.
Like the whiskey Black Label.
Yep.
There you go.
So you have that.
I remember because of that. I don't drink, by the way.
Me neither. You're not alone.
So nav-link has some requirements. Well, one, it needs a destination. So this is similar to the href from ATAGs. This is called to in nav-link. So nav-link needs something called to. And so because, again, this is going to be dynamic, every link is going to lead to a new location. We need to expect we're going to get something from the parent, or the item that created this label is going to tell us where we should go. And so we can do, again, props.to. We'll just use the same term. We'll just do a handoff kind of concept. So we're just going to use the same terminology that nav-link uses on our nav button. So we can add to our prop types to.
Do we need to do that nav.button prop types? You said that wasn't
No, you don't need to do
so
that.
I didn't type it.
No, you don't need to do it. If you want to have it, and again, I'll show you what it does when we get to it. You can add it, and if anyone after the fact wants to add it, I can send you. I'll send you this in Zoom or Slack. After you see what the benefits are. So, for those of you who don't understand why you might want to do this, feel free to leave it out for now, so you can see the difference between your code and my code, how it behaves.
So on
differently
line
later.
8, then I don't put label after props,
You
correct?
do this. Yeah, these are normal. All I'm doing here is telling the system what these are supposed to contain. These are supposed to contain strings. That's all I'm doing. I'm telling it that, and that the fact is, I'm expecting to get a label in a 2. I can also say on this as well, and this is probably important actually now that I think about it. Required is required. And I'll put the same here. Required. That I need that a label must be provided, and that a 2 element must be provided.
That's why it's wrong, because I have a comma there, not a period. Okay.
Oh, good. Comes,
Continue.
got those. Oh, you had a comma here. Gotcha. That's why I was telling you label is bad. Yep, no, this wasn't making label work. So got those. And so this is all we technically need, but then again, let's also give it the style so that make sure that navlink actually looks like it belongs on our nav bar. So we save this now. Let's save it now and just add it to our nav bar and see what it looks like. So back on nav bar, we're going to go ahead and bring in the nav button now. Nav button. I'm going to add 2 of them, even though they don't do anything yet. We're going to add 2 nav buttons. Add a div to contain them. So again, well, hold on. Before I do that, let's make sure you guys see why we need that. So nav button. I save this as is. Fresh, going to see I don't load because I currently have an error. I believe because I require a 2 element. Yep, see? Warning, failed prop type, the prop label is marked as required in nav button. So when you do a is required on the prop types, it will actually error the page if I don't provide one. So I'm guessing on yours, you didn't get an error, did you?
Mm.
Right. So that's the is required. That's
No,
one
I
of the
got one
benefits.
too, though.
You did?
Yeah.
What's yours say?
What's it say? It says 2 is undefined.
Yeah, because we didn't send it yet.
Right.
Yeah, we didn't send the prop either. So wait, no. What? 2 is undefined.
Yeah, props dot 2.
It could be yelling at Navlink might be yelling at you because Navlink also requires it. So Navlink might be upset because we didn't give it a 2. So I required it. Navlink might also require it. So for those of you who actually didn't provide it, it still might be upset. So no. Let's do 2. This is going to be to root, and this is going to be label home. And you saw there for 2 seconds, I went too fast. It was the other reason why we do the prop types. So I typed a T, you'll see that it's going to recommend, hey, you want to do 2, right? Which is a string. It's going to tell me, hey, do you want to do the 2 tag or the 2 property, the 2 prop? Yep, on the 2 prop.
Mine didn't do that.
Right, because you don't have the prop types. That's one of the other benefits of prop type. Is that needed? No. But is it convenient? Yes. And that's where the benefit of prop type comes in. It's a little bit of extra effort to get some nice convenience later on. So when I start typing in label, you're going to see it's going to recommend, oh, hey, are you trying to do the label prop? Because it knows, or JavaScript or the editor now knows, because of the prop types, that it's expecting a label prop and a 2 prop. So it's able to recommend, is that the prop you're trying to give me? So that's one of the other, those are the 2 main benefits for prop types. There are other benefits, of course, as well as validation and stuff. Like I said, making sure I get a string instead of a number or a string instead of a Boolean. Or getting a string when I wanted a Boolean, things like that. So those are the other benefits of prop type. But this is one of the main things is this convenience of being told, hey, which are you, is this the prop you're trying to do? Is this the property you're trying to type in? So it can save you time later on. Log in. And try to do user-friendly text. So home and capital H home and capital L home. So we do those. And so now after that, if anyone wants to add the prop types, I'll add that to Zoom now that you've seen the benefits of it. If you want to add those in, there they are. Yeah. Optional, not required. they provide convenience. That's again, prop types
They're
is
so
like
far
a,
apart.
what's that?
Said they're so far apart.
What is? Oh, the buttons.
Mhm.
You sorry, you looked at the page already. Yep. Yeah, there they are. What's actually happening, just go ahead.
I fixed mine because I know what you're going to do,
Yeah.
so.
So what's happening here is that we're actually doing space between here and space between here. Because these are standalone items that are similar to this div right here. So there's the element that's holding our text, the div holding the text, and then these two nav bar elements here. And so these are all being treated by the same row or the same flex component that is doing space between. So we got space between this div and then space between the nav link and space between this nav link. And so it's taking the space between these and then divvying them up evenly. So you got the same space between expressing and home as we do between home and login. So that's what's happening here. To make sure we don't have that happen, we need to encompass these two together so that they part of their own group. So that way there's only one block here and one block here. And so we're going to create a div. And so we can combine or hold all of our nav bars together.
Can you go back a second? I think I missed something.
No worries. I'll do the nav
Oh, that was under nav link.
here. Here we go. So there's the div.
Made something.
There's the two items. So feel free to take a look and update anything you need.
So Cliff, is props a package that we imported from another common folder?
Yes.
Or-
No, it's
Okay.
sorry, hold on. Prop types is a extension. It's something you need to do npm I. So
Oh, okay.
package, this one. So you just do npm I prop types if you want to use it. So
I guess maybe I didn't do that because mine is not showing. Prop types is not defined.
Yeah, those were the errors I was getting when looking at my React.
that npm I prop types.
Oh, okay. Sure.
It's a package. That's what the import command means. Import a package or file. Yeah, whenever you see the
I just forgot
imports.
to save nav button.
No worries. Oh, okay. Gotcha, gotcha. Anybody else? Good. Very quick to our nav bar. Before we start adding our styling to our nav buttons, let's just make sure these are bundled together. So I'm going to go ahead and bundle them up in a div. So H1 tag is going to be by itself. We could give it a div if we wanted to. We also don't need to. We could. We definitely want to make sure we bundle the buttons in a div though. Why are you so indented? All right, there we go. Wrap our buttons in a div. Here's my notes. There they go. There you go. All right, for the buttons, style. Do I think. Yeah, I'm gonna do margin again. So I don't want the thing giving us auto margin. So 0. .px. So that way we get the same kind of gap on the right hand side because we saw over there on our application, the login is right up against that wall. And that looks really, really, really bad, right? And it's like stuck up against the wall. So we're going to give it that same kind of padding that we gave to the logo. So give it the same padding, the same gap.
You added a new div after the H1. Okay.
Yep. It'll contain all of our nav buttons. So flex direction, going to be again row because we want our buttons to be side by side. Want this to have a So this one is probably not as necessary, but it's good to have and something I've used in mine before. So again, I'm helping you guys kind of use what I've dealt with before. The background of this one is actually, of this div is going to be transparent. We want to make sure it shows that we'll make sure it shows the color of our nav bar. We don't want it overwriting the color or anything like that. So we're going to transparent background. What that one is. This actually could have, and then this one as well. Anything that is clickable or, yeah. So this is an interesting one. So again, this is more just. I will say this property is not as important as other ones. So this is just me exposing it to you guys because I've used it before. It's nice to have. It's called user select. All this means is whether or not the user can highlight or select the text. And we don't want them accidentally like highlighting the text in a button. It's just kind of annoying when that happens when you're trying to use it and you're randomly highlighting crap. So it's kind of the idea here. We don't want them being able to select the items, like highlight them and select them. So yeah, not an important item, but just again, convenience and makes it look a little more professional. So if you forget that one, don't worry about it. Align items. So we can get that center because we did the margin 0. Align item is going to put us back in the center vertical. Back in. And let's see what this looks like just to start. Save that, let's pop back over. Oh, better. It's all the way over to the right now. We got a little gap here, but there's something definitely not looking right there, is there?
You didn't put padding around the buttons
Yeah.
to separate them.
Those buttons look a little friendly, don't they? They're a little too buddy.
Too friendly.
So.
They're not COVID safe.
No, separate 6 feet. So yeah, let's give them some padding. Again, not going to give them any vertical padding, but we're going to go ahead and give them some dynamic padding. Now, this is where the padding should really probably be relevant to the screen we're using, right? Instead of giving it a static number, we can probably give it a more dynamic padding. So that we'll give them a gap based on the application. So in this case, we'll go ahead and use the one EM. So use EM again, so we can benefit from dynamicism. It seems like it didn't take that. Here.
Mine didn't take it either.
Moving them both away from the edge of the screen, I think. Yeah, that's what it's doing.
The padding is moving them to the from the right it's moving them to the left from the right edge of the screen.
All right, the padding is on the div. Never mind. Yeah, we don't need that. We have the margin for that. Okay. We need to add those to the elements, right? And I don't know why they're putting them there. But yeah, they're definitely not where they want to be. We need to actually add some styling now to the buttons themselves so that they can be separated and that they no longer have this underscore kind of styling with this normal A tag link. We want them to be separate. We also want to add maybe some lines between, or at least minimum, make it so when we go to highlight over them, they change color, that they have a hover effect. So it might be nice to have some sort of hover effect on that. So let's go ahead and add that. Let's go back now to our nav buttons. And let's add some nice effects to these. So nav bar, save that. Go to nav button now. Bring that back over here so we don't take up the screen. Hold on, I'll give 2 seconds here. Let you guys type this out. Make sure you got everything.
Yeah, yeah. Somewhere here, my divs are messed up. I'm trying to figure out where I made a mistake. Give me a sec.
This is all we've
I
added
think I know.
recently.
I think I know where it is. Yep.
Got it.
Yep. Let me just write down that one transparent.
I'm gonna add this last bit for us. So we can finish up.
None.
Good.
My home is still in the middle. Should be right next to login, shouldn't it?
Share your screen.
Yes, sir.
Get looked at.
Give me 1 second. Oh my god, what am I?
Jeez. What happened?
No, I got it.
Okay.
Second screen. All right, see how it's in the, you can see this second screen?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. See, it's not, it shouldn't
You
be.
try refreshing yet?
Oh god. God damn it. That's twice in one night, and it's on recorded too.
Sorry about that. As soon as you shared, I'm like, uh-oh, he's gonna hate me.
I love the
should've asked it
tagline for
before.
your rental app, Sergio.
I didn't see it. What was it?
His is Greco rental because it's my app, but he has it spelled not Greco with the I. They're different guys, which is something that I said when he made the joke.
Oh, geez.
I forgot about that actually.
You've been exposed.
Greco Rentals, not Greco, different guys.
Nice. All right, so we have our divs, we have that. Let's go back to nav button now. We're gonna add some styling to this. So first we'll just add some standard styling and then we'll add the hover effects. So first, let's get some standard styling in here. Again, we'll try to review what these styles do as we go through them, anything that we haven't seen before, but otherwise a lot of these should start to be very familiar. So first one, background. Again, want that to be transparent, so that way it goes transparent. It goes ahead and loads. It shows the color behind our nice knockoff Expedian color. Next up, we want to get rid of that styling that comes from the A tag. So as you see, Navlink is using an A tag. There's just some additional stuff going on with it that's going in the background that React is handling, like class active and the ARIA current, all that kind of stuff is happening automatically by React DOM. We want to get rid of these A tag items, and that's going to be called text decoration. All we do here is just make it none. We don't want any of that fancy decoration on that. That could be underlines. And so text decoration includes like underlining, a strikeout, all that kind of stuff. I think it also may include italics. I can't remember. But yeah, we don't want any text decoration on this element, on this item. I think we'll keep the font the same for now. Yeah. With that.
Can I ask you a quick question? You keep
course.
switching back and forth in your JavaScript from double quotes to
Oh.
single quotes. Does that, so it doesn't matter?
Not really, no.
Okay, because on
Because
the
of the
other page,
main-
you have transparent in double quotes and you had it on here, but then none was in double quotes. And on this one, it's not. So I didn't know if that matters.
JavaScript doesn't really care. It really only cares when you're doing like escape characters and stuff. So I believe in the single quote, escape characters don't actually work. They'll display, but they don't actually do anything. So at least for JavaScript. So that's the only thing that JavaScript cares about is escape characters. Double quotes for escape characters and quotes if you don't want to deal with escapes. Size, yeah, we'll do font size. We'll go ahead and make it a little bigger than the standard default size. We'll do like a 1.25 EM. Again, fonts, you technically want to avoid pixel measurements at all in most cases. Very commonly, you'll see me use EM for fonts. Go ahead and give it some color. So in this case, let's see. So we want to make sure we're not getting that blue or purple color. We want to make sure we're getting something more standard. I think we'll stay with the darker color. So we'll go with a dark color. So we'll do a 010101. So you don't want pure black. You want something a little off black and off white. So those can be very, very aggressive colors. So we might just switch to standard, but that's what I'm used to doing. You don't want to use pure 000, and you also don't want to use pure a full FFF. Always off, slightly off. Next up, we want to make these a little heavier. So I'm going to teach you another concept we have. Instead of doing bold, Instead of doing bold and doing text, what we can do actually is do something called numbers. And so you can do numbers from like 100 up to like 1,000. We can also just do lighter normal, but in this case, I don't know if the fonts we have, the default font, what numbers we have available to ourselves. When you go to like Google Fonts, so I just want to introduce this. Google font.google.
Fonts.google, yeah.
Oh, fonts.google.com, I think. Google Fonts. I'm just gonna do Google Fonts. Dang it.
I just put fonts in Google.
It is fonts.google.com. Dang it. I was right. Should have more confidence in myself. What you'll see here is you'll see regular 400. You'll see others that have that. Fonts.
You have the scaling on the top.
10 styles. Here we go. So 10 styles. Here they all are. These are the numbers. So you can see here we have thin 100, light 300, light 300, italic, 400, 400, 700, 700, 900, all the way to 900. And so these are what you're starting to see. Bold is considered a style, is considered a weight of 700. So whenever you type bold, the concept is 700. I actually don't remember what the numbers were. I looked them up a while ago. I don't remember what they stand for, what the numbers mean. But the idea is, yeah, you have 100, you have 100 up to, and that 100 is thin, light, regular is considered 400. Again, I remember I knew what it meant beforehand. I don't remember right now anymore what they meant, what the number stood for. But you can bring in, when you bring in these fonts, you can bring in multiple thicknesses or multiple boldnesses. I think it's thickness. Yeah, that's the right term for this. So you can bring in multiple thicknesses for your fonts. And then instead of just using the term like bold or regular, you can also provide numbers. And so if we wanted to get these to be bold, instead of just typing bold, we can also just type 700 and get the same behavior. A lot of the default fonts, you can have other ones. So if you want something a little less than bold, not fully like full bold, you could do like 600 or 500 and get something a little less than bold, while still being better or being more thick or more bolder than regular text. So we have a little more oomph. So you can even use these in your text like paragraphs to give a little bit extra oomph to some text versus giving it a full-on bold hit. Do that so that way when you see font weight and you see font weight other than bold, you're like, oh wait, there is other options. That's the point for that. We're gonna add this, even though I don't think you guys need it, but text shadow, I had it on my notes and the ones we did last time in the last class. So go ahead and bring them in. PX and then PX. We'll go ahead and bring in our one. Ooh, type run, right? Text shadow, so we get a nice little white border around the font. Text align, center. Really, with the thing with the double quotes versus single quotes is whether or not my pinky decides to move over to the shift key or not. If it moves to the shift key, I add double quotes. If it doesn't, then I do a single quote. It really isn't any sort of deciding factor. It's whether or not my pinky moves. Radius. I think it's not needed in this one because again, we're doing the transparent background, but I've added this in case there's anyone who does it. If we do add color, it'll actually have the nice rounded edges. So rounded edges are very, very popular right now. You don't want those sharp corners anymore. Sharp corners are considered very old school now. Again, I did the pinky. Next up, we want to do something called white space. It's going to do no wrap. I mean, we don't want things to wrap around. So if it goes too long, we don't want things to wrap around. I'm going to add not that yet. We don't need that yet. Don't need the other one yet. Last one. This is going to give us our spacing between the two elements, 0px at the top. So we can do 0, and we'll do 10px left to right, because that'll total in 20px in between them. Remember, this is going to add a 10px margin to the left and the right of the text, or to the button itself. And so that'll add 20 total in between two buttons. So always be aware of that when you're thinking about padding and margins and stuff like that. When you have it around items that are going to be the same elements, you want to add these up. So there's going to be 10 on the left and right on both items. So when you're side by side, in between the two items is 20. You don't want those gaps being too large, because you're like, oh, I need to do 20. So then you end up with a 40px in between. So keep these small, because these will be duplicated. Whatever you put here is doubled, is what you should argue in your head. Then we do the label. And the link. So this is non-hovering yet. So let's just save and see what this looks like. Looking a little better. What do you think about the hover? Do we like the hover there? Do we want to get rid of the text shadow, or do you want to get rid of the text shadow? What do you think?
I like it, but I hate it.
All right.
Decisive.
Thank you for that.
How do we solve the problem of the spacing between home and login? I must have missed that part.
That was the margin.
Margin.
Yep.
Margin.
Last thing we added.
0. Oh, I put instead of 10 pixels, I put 1 pixel.
That'll do it.
That'll be
That's gonna be
very-
hard to notice.
Yes, 1 pixel.
People are gonna start leaving. That's fine.
Should
We're
we
almost
be
done.
using EM instead of PX in any of these?
For these, not so much, because we do want that standard kind of spacing. We don't want the spacing to be shrunk in smaller items. If you do want the spacing between the buttons to be more dynamic based on smaller screens, you could switch this to an EM. But I like the for certain items, I like the consistency. For border radius, definitely use PX, because that is just, I've noticed odd behaviors when I've used EM and the dynamic items in border radius, because that again gives the rounded corners if we used opposite colors. Currently in the system, we're not using different colors, so it's fine. But if you were using colors and stuff on the actual tabs, because you were doing some sort of like highlight, if you want the button for the page you're on to be colored differently, this can give a nice rounded edge to it. This might not be what you want to see, though, so you can also get rid of it. So it's something you can do. Just for buttons, you tend to do rounded edges. But in this case, I probably wouldn't get rid of it, because I actually don't think it'll look good. We're not really using it. So this is this could be a leftover from my button code. And now more that I think about it, I don't like it. I don't feel like it would look good if I did it. I'm gonna get rid of that actually. Get rid of border radius. It's gonna cause a problem later. Anyway, they have these. All good, Sergio?
I am good on my side. Yes.
One thing we could do, by the way, just to mess with Taylor, who likes but doesn't like it. We take the color here and make it just a little bit darker. I can't remember how I did that. I don't think I can do that here.
It looks nicer with a lighter color. I used the lighter one.
Lighter could work, but yeah, that's right, lighter. I feel like there's a way to do that. Just can't remember how. I feel like you could put the item in there and just do lighter, and it would actually make it lighter. I can't remember how to do that. There was a way to do that. Right. No, that's not right. So now, I guess you do a brightness filter, but yeah. Yeah. Do that won't work here. Color wheel.
You can change the color to something brighter.
And just gotta get the hashtag for it. That doesn't look right. Do that, and then that makes it lighter. Okay, this week here actually though. A little bit lighter. That. grab that and put that as a text shadow. See what that looks like. That way it's a subtle shadow. That look better, Taylor?
Approve.
So play with that a bit. And again, like I said before, CSS trial and error. So it's a slightly off color from the background, so that it helps it to kind of pop a little bit off the nav bar a little bit, which would be nice to see. So it pops it off the nav bar a little bit to make it kind of just raised up and give it this kind of like raised feeling, which can be really cool. It's a very modern concept to have text that looks like it's raised off the screen instead of just flat against it. Get that. Last thing I'm going to do quick, and hopefully this will only take a couple minutes. We're just going to add a quick hover functionality. So hover is when we go to put the mouse over, what we wanted to do is kind of go to a little peg. We want the text to lighten a bit, or maybe even lighten or darken a bit. So we know that we're about where our mouse is on top of it. We're going to click this, that this is the item we're pointing at. And because of that, when we're doing that, we want to track because again, this is React. We always want to think of React when changes need to be made. We want the changes to be done because of state changes. So changes should occur because the state of the system changed. And so we want the component to have a hover state. Am I on hover or am I off hover? Is the hover true or false, right? Am I currently hovering over this or am I currently not hovering over it? And so once I start to hover, we should then change the hover state to true. And once I leave the element, the hover state should turn to false. So we can display the right style depending on whether or not we are or are not hovering. Since we're going to use state, we're going to go ahead and bring state in. So, use state, and this is our first re-exposure to state components now, to adding state to our application. So I was hoping that's what I wanted to bring this in today, because I wanted to finally bring something in with state. And this will be a very simple state example. We're just going to do a single item. Once we create an array because use state will return an array of 2 items. The first item is the state object. What is the current state of the item? That's what this is, state. And this one we're going to call it though, hover. This is the current state of this attribute. Next up, we're going to give next up, use state will give us a function to change the state of this element, to change this and to trigger a re-render of any elements that are based on this state item. So any elements that utilize hover can be re-rendered if hover changes. At least can be checked to see if they need to be changed or re-rendered. And commonly we call that set in the name of the state. So set hover in this case. So this is the state itself, and this is the changer, which commonly is called set in the same name. These are not.
Getter.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, this is your getter. This is your setter. You can consider it that way. Yep, definitely can consider it that way. But it's not really a getter because it has the data.
Yeah.
So it's not a method.
Yeah.
But you can definitely if that helps you to kind of understand what their purposes are, what their uses are, definitely is very similar. So getter and setter, very, very similar concept. We do set state, or sorry, use state. And then in the parentheses, we give it the default state of this element here. What is the starting element state of that? Well, on any button, what is the starting default state of any button? Are we hovering it?
No, so it's
No,
false.
100%, yeah. The starting state of our buttons is that they are not on hover. They are false. So now I'm going to make a slight change here. So I'm going to bring these 2 new lines so I can clean up my code a little bit, make it a little nicer looking. Indent, indent, indent. So we're going to add yet another prop to this nav link. We're going to use a method called onMouseEnter. So this is when the mouse enters the element, when the mouse scrolls past and enters into the element's bounds. When that happens, we want to mark the system as being hovered, that the element is currently hovered. Since it is a function itself is an event, this is an event handler, we're going to give it a lambda function so that it can do some sort of behavior. So we're going to do bracket, arrow. All we're going to do is when we enter this item, we're just going to tell it, hey, once you enter this component, just set the hover to true, right? Once we've entered the element, the hover is true. So set hover Want to guess what the alternate is? If we want, when we want to turn off hover. Any guesses what the other one is?
On mouse exit.
Good guess. Any other versions? Any other? Anybody have a thesaurus?
A mouse down.
No,
Look
not
at-
that one. That's
I'll look at some
clicking.
of these.
That's
But
clicking. Mouse down, mouse up is clicking.
Oh,
Down,
Mouse
click,
leave.
and release.
under mouse leave, yeah.
There it is. That's the other one. Yep, on mouse leave. Really good guess on the exit. I forgot about that word. I definitely would have been like, yeah, that sounds right. Yeah, it's enter and leave. Yeah, probably because you don't want the same starting E character instead of so enter and exit, enter and leave. We're gonna do leave now that I think about it. It's a weird one. Exit does sound better. Said hover, false.
Around true, those are braces or
Curly brackets, yes. So these are the curly brackets on the for that because we're trying to make sure that React knows we're about to enter JavaScript code. So this is all JavaScript, so must be encompassed inside of curly brackets when doing
No,
JSX.
the yellow. The yellow.
Parentheses. Both the yellows are parentheses.
Okay.
Yeah, set hover is a function. And this is just preparing the lambda, the nameless function, also known as the lambda expression. A function without a name, because I can't call this function anywhere else in the code. It's just usable here. So you got those, and these will cause it to switch back and forth. All right. What I'm gonna do quick is just do this little fun thing here. Ready? Curly bracket, hover. If true, we're just gonna have it display hi or nothing. All right, just gonna get that text in there. Just to make sure it's happy, I'm gonna put p tags now that I think about it, because it might not like having just, no, it's fine, we'll just make it the text, we'll just see what it does. Might not be a good idea, but we'll see what it does. I'm just curious to see what happens. Hey, it works. Take a look. Yeah, let's just.
I noticed that if you don't put, I noticed if you don't put like P tags, it actually just displays as P tags, but you can't go too nuts.
Yeah, no, we do for crazy with that because then it still get upset with it because none of the p tag elements will, none of the p tag stuff will affect it. It's just
Yeah, but
loading
if you
text.
do like one, if you do
Those
like
considered
one
bad
line of
practice.
text, it'll be
Yeah.
fine.
It's a bad practice, so don't do it normally. We're just doing
Yeah,
this for testing.
exactly.
I'll hold for a second, make sure people can get this in.
Somehow I'm missing something. I just don't know what.
What's your code doing?
It's no duplicate props allowed. What did I type that was?
Do you have the same prop somewhere?
Okay, I figured it out.
Got it.
One of my words was misspelled. That's why.
Ah, that'll do it.
Okay.
Spell checker, man.
Spell checker. You all need them. Actually, a spell checker for developers. That's just nope.
So I redid it, but mine is not doing the hover part. Set hover.
Did you refresh yet? Just a sanity check.
Nope, I refreshed twice already.
Okay, good. Just didn't want to pull. I was already did it twice to Sergio. I didn't want to do it again.
Trust me, I wasn't about to share my screen and be an idiot. That was
Don't
not
do
a
it.
dig at Sergio. That was at me.
Do not commit a surgery today.
There. Oh, you just haven't added the text on line 25 yet. So on line 25, we added the ternary expression after label. Go back to my code quick. I just added that. You might not have seen it because you were dealing with the other issue you had with the error. So you already
So
just didn't
just stop
notice.
sharing my screen.
Yeah. I'll go back to mine. I could have just started and took it over, but yeah. Then we added this. Your hover's probably working. You just have nothing displaying right now.
Okay, so label.
Yeah, we haven't told it to do anything on the site to show the hover. So I added that little there just to showcase something on the site when we hover.
So hover.
It's So we're just saying a simple ternary expression that if hover is true, display high, and if it's not true, display nothing, or just empty string. So with that there, the end result is, yeah, once you save that and refresh it, your page, you should be able to.
So
As
now
soon as
if
your
I,
mouse enters.
so where it says hover, where we decided to put in the string high, we would just basically change that for more JavaScript CSS to make it do something else.
Understand, we're gonna bring that into our style item. Since our style item is, our style object is just a JavaScript object, we can do JavaScript code right inside of here. So we're gonna add another element here called opacity. And this is that idea of making the element see-through. So the lower the opacity, the more you can see through the element. So all we're gonna do here is do hover, true or false. If it's true, we wanna display the element at about a, not 80, that's not strong enough. We wanna set the opacity to 60%. So you can, it's 60% solid. So again, 100% means it's fully solid. 0% means it's completely invisible. It's completely see-through. It's like glass. So we'll make it a little more than half see-through. And when it's not on hover, we want to see the element fully. So 100%. We'll go ahead and get rid of the hover here on line 26 now. Save that. So very simple bit of code. We're not doing anything fancy, like crazy flashy with the hover. We just want something subtle. And that's a lot of times with your display, simple and subtle, it can have a bigger effect than something flashy and vibrant. So you can see now we just got this subtle, and I forgot about the text shadow. Probably should mess with the shadow as well.
It's cool. We get the gist of it.
Yeah, you get the point. It's very, very subtle. You should probably add a little bit more to it, but yeah. You could also do this as well. So just for the fun of it. So you can do it in multiple locations. On hover, we'll show the not hovering, we'll show the darker color. When hovering, we'll go ahead and switch it to white. So F1. See another example of the change. So there you go. Yeah, it changes its color, and I start hovering over it. A lot of things you can do with this just to have fun with it. You can make changes to the background if you want the background color to get a slight hint of color. There's a bunch of things you can do with this. But this is a very simple state system. Once the mouse enters, we change the state, the hover to true, so that it causes the color and opacity to change during the re-render. And we leave, this goes back to false, turning the hover, the color and opacity back. Shoot your question. Okay. Hash. I should have done this earlier. I don't have time for that. We'll do that tomorrow on Thursday. It's fine. So. Be aware that if I click the home works, but if as soon as I click on login, our page doesn't show anything. So just be aware that it does work because we go to the login screen, but it doesn't have anything there because we don't have a component yet. We don't have a route for it. So someone said they had a question. I'm going to stop sharing though. So git push. And just so everybody knows, if you go to my GitHub, you'll see that we have a ch12 expression for this application now. So
yes.
You can
I added a
download this from
background
GitHub.
to it. But it's too small.
All right. In that case, you could probably add some padding to the top and bottom to make sure that it expands it a bit. So yeah, I would just increase, add some top and bottom padding. So that way you get a little more color change.
Not quite that, but that's okay. I can play with that later.
Definitely. Have fun with it. Any questions or anything you need to review? Do I need to pull up my code again? Does anyone need to look at the code more or got it all? So we're 20 minutes over. So I'm surprised more people, I'm actually surprised most of you are still here, unless a couple of you. So we're good then.
All
So again, work on the algorithm, the Udemy course. If you haven't gotten the second one done, that is your guys' main goal for tonight versus tomorrow. Again, what we'll do tomorrow at the start of class, we'll open the floor a little bit, but then we'll go ahead and do some algorithms. We'll do an algorithm challenge tomorrow for about an hour, hour and a half, and then we'll dig deeper into the binary trees.
Where are we supposed to be on the videos?
Udemy course, my goal is to try to have you guys do the first two algorithms by tomorrow.
So the time complexity and the array one, correct?
Yeah,
Okay.
first two algorithms. Yep.
You're still recording.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So